Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, County Commissioners. It's Wednesday, April 13th. Commissioner DeBone will be joining us in a few moments.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation.
As far as citizen input goes today, we email of world 20 closing a citizen saying, please don't put homeless on. There is a on the Forest Service land. Have a testimony, Rondo, you wanted to have your 3 minutes this morning?
Decades, calling it my home. I think we all bypass some of the, for whatever reason, we but I think that we have the ability to solve a problem today. Sorry for the drama. Not really. Hear what I'm saying here. Okay. Excuse me. Not a proponent. Others containers, and in a lot of the cleanups that we have periodically, that these are used and dropped. There's no reason to have them go anywhere. Matter of fact, I understand. So as I started off this room, what seems obvious to me. Our public lands, and so that the people in this room that are working on a way to prevent these from coming in the deposit program.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thanks for your input today. Is there anyone else in the room? Is there anyone? Thank you. We do have.
And I will second it.
Any further comment? I just do want to thank. Really needed, and his expertise is longstanding. So nice. Thank you, Wayne. So Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Commissioner DeBone?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So our first action item is Fair Housing Month. Whitney?
Oh, this is,
When you just headed up the hallway.
or Nick.
Nick?
Sure. This is the proclamation declaring April 2022 as Fair Housing Month. I want to thank the Central Oregon Association of Realtors for bringing this to our attention again this year, and providing us with a sample proclamation that we have revised for the board's consideration to, again, declare April 2022 as Fair Housing Month. So with that, I'll turn it over to commissioners if you would like to read it, as we have done in the past, for your consideration.
I didn't know. Tyler, did you want to say anything? Oh, sure. I mean, you drove over, you risked the road, so we'd love to hear, have you join us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
I would love to hear a little bit of the history of this, of Fair Housing Month, where, kind of how it came about and how widely it's recognized and for how long, those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Commission and for bringing this proclamation forward. Really, Fair Housing Month, I think its origins date back to the Fair Housing Act, which was passed on April 11th, 1968. And so for realtors and housing advocates really across the country, Fair Housing Month is a significant milestone really to commemorate the legislation. And so we really, every April, use the opportunity for, a number of different things. I think education just around the Fair Housing Act, around what types of housing exist, access to housing, things of that nature, and really the proclamation. Again, we appreciate your support. I think it's just kind of a reaffirmation of commitment to fair housing. I know that's something the Commission's very committed to, and we appreciate that. And so, just appreciate the opportunity to provide a little background this morning and for your support. But happy to answer any questions you might have.
Did anyone have any questions?
It's just acknowledging, this is a national effort, acknowledging, and we'll get to it in the proclamation, the specific statements in here, but the opportunity for housing should be fair and equal for all. Pretty exciting.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you for joining us today, too, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner DeBonne, do you want to read the first three? And Commissioner Chang, you can read the next three, and then I'll read the last two.
So before the Board of Commissioners of Deschutes County, Oregon, proclamation declaring April 2022 as Fair Housing Month. Whereas Fair Housing Act, enacted in April 11th, 1968, enshrined into federal law the goal of eliminating racial segregation and ending housing discrimination in the United States. And whereas the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, familial status, national origin, and disability, and commits recipients of federal funding to affirmatively further fair housing in their communities. And whereas Deschutes County is committed to the mission and intent of Congress to provide fair and equal housing opportunities for all.
And whereas our social fabric, the economy, health, and environment are strengthened in diverse, inclusive communities. And whereas more than 50 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, discrimination persists and many communities remain segregated. And whereas acts of housing discrimination and barriers to equal housing opportunity are repugnant to a common sense of decency and fairness.
And whereas Deschutes County is an inclusive community committed to fair housing and to promoting appropriate activities by private and public entities to provide an advocate for equal housing opportunities for all residents and prospective residents of Deschutes County. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Board of County Commissioners does hereby declare the month of April 2022 as a Fair Housing Month. So we need to have a motion to date this the 13th of April 2022 by the Deschutes County Board of County Commissioners.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any further discussion?
So I'll acknowledge, this is the concept of the great melting pot, the United States of America. Anybody and everybody having the opportunity for housing and, celebrating the diversity in our community.
Any other? It's amazing. It was, 54 years ago? And it's so important. So thank you for bringing that. And I do, I'm really glad that we acknowledge how important it is in our community. So Commissioner DeBonne, I believe you made the motion,
I'll vote yes.
and Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes.
There we go. Congratulations. Thank you.
Okay. item number 3, we have an award for Lapine.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning,
For the
Cody.
record, Cody Smith, County Engineer, Deschutes County Road Department. The Road Department prepared bid solicitation documents for the pedestrian ramp improvement Lapine Maintenance Zone project. The scope of work for this project includes replacement of approximately 44 sidewalk ramps on county roads within the city of Lapine, along with repair of several more sidewalk ramps in the city of Lapine, and ancillary paving and sidewalk repair and other work. The ultimate intent of this is to bring all of the sidewalk ramps on county roads within the city of Lapine into compliance with current accessibility standards per the U.S. Access Board and their published standards. The project was advertised for bids beginning March 9th. Bids were received and opened by the department on March 30th. 2 bids were received. Before you this morning is the notice of intent to award contract to Van Neville Concrete and Curb of Redmond in the amount of $290,543.62. I'll note that this bid was about $52,000 or 22% over our engineer's estimate for the project. The engineer's estimate that we had prepared for this project, we had based the bid prices on some bid prices received by ODOT very recently on a project to do the same type of work all along the Highway 97 corridor between Lapine and Klamath Falls. So we're a little bit surprised that even with adjusting our anticipated prices to those with a very similar recent project that we still came in this high over our engineer's estimate. But nonetheless, this project can still comfortably fit within our current fiscal year CIP budget due to savings or project deferment that we've got on other projects. And this project needs to move forward to bring these facilities into compliance with those current accessibility standards. As always, issuance of notice of intent to award will begin the 1-week protest period for interested parties to contest award of the contract, and if no protests are received, the contract will be awarded administratively after April 20th. Subject to award of this contract, we anticipate work would begin in May. The contract completion date is August 31st of this year. An actual schedule from our contractor is still pending. With that, glad to answer any questions.
Oh, Cody, I think you answered all my questions. I'm like, when's it starting, when's it ending? But the fact that it's 22% over what the estimate is incredible. It's like right there in our face, inflation. So thank you. Yeah, that $52,000 over estimate. I mean, we've seen a few bids that have come in under estimate in the last couple months, but this is truly one it's considerably over. So thank you for all of that information. Are there any other questions?
No, I'd just like to say that I'm excited to see this work happen in Lapine and improve mobility and, particularly pedestrian mobility and connectivity in that community.
With that, I'll move Chair's signature of document number 2022-094, the notice of intent to award for pedestrian ramp improvements to Van Neville Concrete and Curb.
Second.
Any other discussion?
So just acknowledging, there's been some great improvements on Highway 97 in the past. The Huntington corridor, some of the intersections are done. This will really round out some of the, just the flow of town. Yesterday, I saw a gentleman in a powered chair on the east side of 97, kind of, getting out to the road and coming back in. It's good to get these projects on the ground, knowing that inflation's happening, being able to get a contractor is going to be very valuable this summer. And also, this is going to be complementing the transportation center that that we'll talk about tonight, but the city's working on in the fourth Huntington and 97 also.
Okay, Commissioner DeBonne?
So voting yes.
Mr. Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Cody.
You.
Okay, we have item number 4. We have another chair signature, and must be Cody again? Surely it is.
Me again, once again for the record, Cody Smith, County Engineer, Deschutes County Road Department. So the Butte Highway Butler Market Road Roundabout project is identified in the County Transportation System Plan as a high priority project. This intersection is a high traffic volume intersection in the most recently available 5-year period of crash data, which was the period between 2016 and 2020. There were 13 crashes reported at this intersection. 9 of those were injury crashes. This intersection lies immediately adjacent to the City of Bend's airport and lies at the eastern terminus of Butler Market Road, whereas at the western terminus of Butler Market Road is the Bend city limits. The road department issued an RFP for engineering services for this project on December 15th of 2021. Proposals were due to the department on January 28th of this year. 4 proposals were received. The department staff scored the proposals using a qualifications-based selection process. On February 16th, it was determined that the top-ranked proposer was Century West Engineering Corporation. The department conducted negotiations with the top-ranked proposer between February 16th and April 6th. Now before you this morning is a notice of intent to award contract to Century West Engineering with a not-to-exceed amount of $355,069. Again, issuance of notice of intent will begin a 1-week protest period for interested parties to contest award of the contract. If no protests are received, contract would be awarded administratively after April 20th. The engineering work for this project is expected to occur through May of 2023, with construction work on the project anticipated to begin in June of 2023. The total project cost, including engineering, right-of-way, and construction, is right now estimated to be $2.5 million. And with that, I'll turn it back to the board chair.
Thank you, Cody. When you said the department staff did the analysis, does that mean you and Chris Doty? Is there anyone else that's part of that evaluation team?
Yeah, the selection panel for this RFP included myself, Chris Doty, our road department director, and Blaine Ruck, transportation engineer that works for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that information. And the cost of $2.5 million, does that include the 300 plus thousand that we're spending here on the proposal? That's the entire cost.
That's our current estimated cost, including engineering, construction, and right-of-way acquisitions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Cody, if I could ask you a really high-level question that's not specific to this project. I'm curious, we talk about problem intersections a lot, and we see a lot of roundabouts being built. Are there problem intersections where a roundabout is not the right solution, or is this just the wonder cure for all kinds of problems?
Yeah, so roundabouts certainly aren't the wonder cure for all problems, and there are cases where a roundabout's not necessarily the most effective mitigation for whether we're trying to. There's two basic metrics we're trying to meet, or that would need to be met when we're improving an intersection. One is safety, and one is capacity. Generally speaking, right now in our county road system, capacity is not an issue. Primarily, the issues that we're dealing with at our intersections have to do with safety. But that said, looking ahead on beyond a 20-year horizon, certainly capacity would become an issue. At that time. But so in terms of safety, when we're looking at, particularly on rural intersections, which is primarily what we're dealing with on our county road system, roundabouts, in terms of safety, in terms of crash history, in terms of the types of crashes that do occur, are substantially more ideal in most cases than opposed to always stop control, which always stop control is then going to inhibit capacity. It's going to give an intersection less capacity. And also in terms of signalizing an intersection. Now there are some cases where signalization of an intersection is acceptable and is not a there's no trade-off in terms of safety. But that's usually based on context where that intersection is located. If it's in an area where the context, the expectation for a signalized intersection is there, then certainly we would look at that. In terms of life cycle cost, signalized intersections generally are more expensive than a roundabout long term. I mean, typically if we're signalizing an intersection, it's not just as easy as throwing up a traffic signal. We're usually looking at road improvements to add turn lanes, add bike lanes, add pedestrian crossing and refuge, in addition to the signal itself and the controller. And then the long-term cost of maintaining that signal and paying for the power and the communication and other things that signal needs. So I mean, there's many reasons why, in most cases, on our rural highway system, that roundabouts are a much better option in terms of an intersection control and intersection treatment, as opposed to our other options such as stop control or signalization.
Thanks so much for walking me through your thought process on that, and it's helpful to understand how you're trying to balance those two key things, safety and capacity.
And then acknowledging, we did have an email requesting, kind of dark skies acknowledgement, best standards on that, and thank you for responding. So it is all about the need for lighting, the choice for, downward facing lighting, and, just using the amount of light needed to make that intersection safe. So is there any other words on that, Cody?
No, the inquiry that Commissioner Bone's referring to, the citizen wanting to ensure that the illumination that the road department was intended to install at this intersection was in conformance with recommendations from the International Dark Sky Association, and the long and short of it is they are the equipment that we and our partner power companies are using on these are compliant with the principles of the International Dark Sky Association. In the design of these projects, we are meeting the principles of that are published by the International Dark Sky Association. So,
great, thank you.
And Cody, at this time, I also want to thank the people that work for our road department that have put gravel out this morning. I particularly noticed it. It was there really early, and I want to thank your entire team for keeping our roads safe, because truly, we don't need to have more accidents. I think today sounded better on the radio than it did yesterday.
Well, and that's what I was dealing with. It was an ice rink from my front door to just south of Bend, and it was going slow this morning. So nobody was in an accident, which was nice, but there was no speeding up on the road this morning.
Okay, so it was an ice rink out there.
Oh, absolutely, full on ice.
Bad spots.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Not necessarily on county roads, but
Yes.
in my neighborhood, it was City of Bend roads that were terrible.
Well, the county road by me was fabulous. So I truly
there's
need.
been a little bit of a curveball for us. Our maintenance guys we're in the chip seal mode right now. We're trying to get roads prepped for our chip seal program that start up next month. So we had to switch back to winter operations, but I'll be sure to pass on your thanks to them.
Please be sure and tell them. They were outside my gate one morning, and yes, they were there really early, and I so appreciate all that they do, because it's, keeps our citizens safer. Thank you, Commissioner DeBonne, for driving slowly this morning.
Yeah.
So I'll move approval of chair signature of document number 2022-248, a notice of intent to award contract for engineering services for the Powell Butte Highway / Butler Market Road intersection improvement project.
And I will second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Cody.
Thank you.
Okay. We now have item number 5, consideration of chair signature of document for an OHA agreement. I believe it's the third amendment of that agreement. Holly, good morning.
Good morning. Hi, thanks for having me. Holly Harris, Program Manager, Deschutes County Behavioral Health Crisis Services. And I'm here today to request consideration of chair signature of document 2022-330, part of our OHA agreement. This amendment provides funding for the amount of $363,000 for startup activities related to mobile crisis. So these startup funds were intended to expand mobile crisis teams across the state so that we can look for ways to respond to certain calls without police. So I've talked to you all about this many times over the years. We've certainly been working towards this for quite some time. And due to staffing challenges, we've really been unable to kind of do it prior to this. But with this additional money, and hopefully money coming down the road in the future from OHA and other legislative investments, we'll be able to expand even further. So these funds will allow us to add one FTE, a Behavioral Health Specialist 1, which is a bachelor's level position, which is much easier to hire right now than the master's level positions that we have been struggling to still hire. And it will allow us to add capacity to be able to implement the pilot project that we've been working on for a while, which is to take certain calls directly from 911 and dispatch the mobile team in pairs of 2 to those calls. We won't be able to do it 24/7 with this amount of money, but hopefully with future investments, we'll be able to get there over time.
Okay, thank you, Holly, for that significant update. Now, they were on the radio today. It was saying that it was actually for 2 years' worth of funding.
It is.
Okay, because this memo says January 1, 22 to December 31, 22.
It's very confusing.
Well,
So
I'm just repeating what I heard on the radio, and I'm going like,
It is. It's the way they chose to do this was via startup funds, and I'm not totally sure of the reasoning why they didn't just roll it into, maybe it has to do with contractual stuff, but they decided to do it as part of what they refer to as Service Element 37, which is a piece of the county financial assistance agreements, and they are related to startup funds. So the way it will work is we will request these funds up front, and then we obviously will not be spending it all by December of 2022. So we'll be requesting carryover into the next year to fund the position for the full 2 years. And my understanding is after that, per OHA, this will roll into what we refer to as Service Element 25, which is our service element as part of the contract that covers all crisis services. So it will become ongoing funds from the Oregon Health Authority. And then there is additional money that was allocated through the legislature, $11 million for the state that we're still waiting to find out what portion of that Deschutes County will get. We're working on the formula right now. And hopefully there'll be even additional future investments to get the teams where both the state and the federal government would like to see mobile teams, which is 24/7 ability to respond in pairs of 2 to certain calls without law enforcement.
So can you talk through that scenario a little bit? Respond in pairs of 2 instead of law enforcement. So, I mean, is this a call to 911, I guess, what does the scenario look like? How does it get started and then how to get dispatched?
Yeah, and some of that's still in the works. So right now, when folks call 911, they automatically dispatch law enforcement to the scene. And so we have been working with 911 and our law enforcement partners to identify what call types and scenarios do law enforcement not need to be responding to initially. So we have a set of questions and criteria that we'll be asking so that we ensure that it's a safe response for non-law enforcement folks to go to. So 911 will follow that criteria. They will, right now at least, call our mobile team directly for those calls and either pass the phone call off to them, and then the mobile team can oftentimes handle those calls over the phone. If they can't handle them over the phone, they'll dispatch in pairs of 2. But once 988 rolls out, it could change a lot of things. 911 may be working directly with 988 to have them handle the calls, and then they might dispatch us. So all of that's sort of in the works right now, and it kind of remains to be seen how it's all going to play out.
Yeah, but it helps to think through that you do as much as you can on the phone to diagnose what's even happening before you would show up. Say, okay, what do we think's going on here, and how high of a response do we need, or how?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we know from managing a crisis line for many, many years that the vast majority of these calls can be resolved over the phone. We can de-escalate over the phone, and then if somebody needs kind of that in-person support, we now have a 24/7 stabilization center that they can then walk into and get the additional supports they need.
Holly, so over time, I'm arriving at an understanding that we need to pay very close attention to overall the complete funding for the whole crisis services program. I mean, initially there was just a tremendous amount of focus on the stabilization center, wanting that to be to have stable funding to operate 24/7. I've been learning from you over the last half year, 9 months, about how exciting of an opportunity our expansion of our mobile crisis assessment team is, and how that can really be transformative in terms of getting people better care and treatment, and also conserving law enforcement resources as well. But to do all these things, to get the crisis stabilization center stably running 24/7, to expand our mobile crisis assessment team is going to require a certain amount of resources. I'm just trying to figure out where these funds from OHA, this addition of $363,000 fits in. I mean, were we anticipating this for a while, or okay, this has been on the radar screen, and it's been part of your budget projections.
It has, yes. I've been on the state work group we knew $10 million was allocated for this biennium for mobile crisis expansion, and the process has been around trying to figure out what the formula was going to be to share the money across the state.
Right. And you also mentioned, so this will add one FTE bachelor's level clinician to the crisis services team. Where and I have a sense that we're trying to build up MCAT sort of kind of in an incremental way, taking on a wider and wider range of types of what are currently 911 calls, but in the ideal world right now, where would we be? I mean, you would get this one FTE, and how many additional FTE are we, would be the optimum for where the MCAT program is at right now?
Right. We're going to probably need an additional 3 FTE over time to get to kind of that 24/7 response. It kind of remains to be seen a little bit in terms of we don't have a sense of the volume yet. We have not done this before. We don't know what, we kind of have a sense of the hours of day. We know that in Deschutes County, for our mobile team, and for our law enforcement, our overnight hours are not our busiest time. So we may be able to use some existing resources to meet the need. And so we're kind of feeling that out. So it's not a bad thing that it's sort of happening incrementally like this. I think we'll be able to dip our toe in the water, see what the volume's like, and then slowly expand to meet the need over time.
So Holly, you just said the overnight hours were not our busiest, correct?
Correct.
Because all the stabilization centers that I'd visited, they were not even open at night, because when they had, categories where their need was, it truly wasn't then. But so Holly, I'm just wondering, remember about a month and a half ago, there was a naked person downtown, and I'm wondering how, apparently that person was downtown for quite a while, how did that person not get transferred to the stabilization center? Do you know any of that story?
Well,
why didn't they get help?
Yeah, I don't know the details of that story, but in general, when we hear stories like that, there's lots of reasons why a person may not come to the stabilization. They may not be willing to.
Okay.
And so because we are an entirely voluntary facility, if law enforcement needs to take somebody under what we refer to as a police officer custody, they have to go to the hospital. And then if they get to the hospital, then it's entirely up to the hospital whether they're held any further. So we don't have it. The person has to be willing to come to us voluntarily to be transported. Now, in a scenario like what I'm talking about with the expansion of mobile crisis, that might have been a scenario in which mobile team in pairs of 2, as long as this person wasn't exhibiting a weapon or acting violently or dangerously, we might have been able to respond in pairs of 2 and do some de-escalation and do what kind of we do best, which is that engagement piece of the work, talk to them about why the stabilization center might be something helpful for them, and then start to build rapport, and then over time get them the help that they need. But these things oftentimes aren't done in just one intervention.
Okay, I was wondering because people were calling and they were told that there was nothing that could be done. So, and truly the person needed help.
Yeah.
So they weren't taken to the hospital. And, yeah, all right, thank you so much for being here.
That's a great vision of the MCAT being able to actually go to that person and support them in place wherever they are.
Right. Because not everybody wants to come to us. I don't know why, but they.
What?
Wow, have they not seen your beautiful waterfall?
Waterfall.
And the comfortable furniture and, yes, your recliners. I mean, yes. No, it's a very, and the lavender out front, yes. I know, you've done a wonderful job. So do we have a motion?
If I could just ask one more question. So to kind of follow that line of questions about kind of what the overall budget for the crisis program, how are we looking coming into the next fiscal year, and what kind of requests or needs do you have as we look at the FY 2023 budget?
It kind of all depends on the impacts grant, which I have already submitted. I also submitted for the Central Oregon Health Council grant of $250,000 match if we get that other grant, which we have been told by the Health Council that we will get that grant if we get the impacts grant. So that was great news to hear. So thank you, Commissioner. And so we are going to be finding out in May where we kind of stand with the impacts grant. If we get fully funded with that, which I really hope we do and feel good about it, I think we'll be in good standing for the next fiscal year. So it's just kind of to be seen at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So May, we will find out in May.
Mid-May, that's
Okay,
what I've been told.
That's a little better than June
It is.
and July, right?
It is. It's a lot
Moving
better.
in the right direction.
They're prioritizing those current grantees. They are not going to be deciding about the rest of the state until after July.
Okay, and ours was what, 2.5 million before?
About 2.4.
4, okay, gotcha. Thank you, Holly.
So with that, I'll move chair's signature of document number 2022-330 for the OHA agreement number is provided.
Second.
Any other discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Mr. Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us.
Good to see you all.
Thanks, Holly.
Okay, we have a second reading.
Ah, there we go. Get the two of them together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Tarek Rawlings, Associate Planner with the Community Development Department, and just as you had noted, today is before you is a consideration of second reading of ordinances 2022-001 and 2022-002. These are related to plan amendment and zone change request from Central Oregon Irrigation District for property that's located off of Ward Road. This follows a public hearing process that initiated with the public hearing on January 26th before the Board of County Commissioners. Deliberations that resulted in an approval on March 3rd, which then that would have been throughout March, there was deliberations and then a first reading, which brings us to 14 days later, which is today after our first reading. We have our second reading in consideration of the ordinances. And with that, I'd be available for any questions you might have, but this is very similar to the process 2 weeks ago for first reading.
Great. Thank you, Tarek, for joining us today.
Of course.
Are there any questions?
I would just ask Tarek, so there's been no additional public input since between reading 1 and reading 2?
No, so not that we were within the open record period any longer, but I haven't heard any email or phone calls or anything in person. Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. So, do we have
Sure, yeah, with that,
motion?
I'll move approval, I'll move second reading of ordinance number 2022-001 and 2022-002 by title only.
Can we do them together?
Yep.
Okay.
Second.
Any other discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes by title only. Ordinance number 2022-001, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 23, the Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan to change the comprehensive plan map designation for certain property from agriculture to rural residential exception area and prescribing an effective date on the 90th day after the date of adoption. So that would be 90 days. And the second reading for ordinance number 2022-002, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 18, the Deschutes County zoning map to change the zone designation for certain property from exclusive farm use to multiple use agricultural and prescribing an effective date on the 90th date after the date of adoption. What might that date be? Do we know?
I was going to work with legal counsel
90
for,
days from now.
yeah, it would be whenever, or when we have final signature on those ordinances.
Mid-July.
Mid-July.
exactly.
Okay.
So there will be a 21-day open record period noticing period that follows this. And so then, my understanding is that at the conclusion of that 21-day period is kind of when that 90-day clock starts, if I'm not
Well,
mistaken.
actually, it starts now.
It starts now? Okay.
Just start now.
Reading now.
Okay.
But there's the loop, the window that someone
Right.
could challenge this to LUBA. There's
Gotcha.
the 20
That's within the
21
90,
days.
though.
days that Derek's talking about.
Okay. Excellent.
Perfect.
And you need to move adoption of each.
Oh, great, yeah. So at this time, let's move adoption, the final step. I'll move adoption of ordinance number 2022-001 and ordinance number 2022-002.
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So I don't have to read them again, correct?
You're done.
Oh, good. Thank you, Tarek. Thank
Thanks very
you.
much, Commissioners. Thanks, Dave. I
Thank you for
appreciate it.
being with the county. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
There you
Thank you very
go.
much. Have a good day.
And I know Peter appreciates you, too.
Thank you. I'll let him know.
Okay, Laura.
Okay.
Thank you.
So recycle this. Okay.
Well, if you have an extra one, sure. As much as I like the tiny little numbers on my screen.
We can zoom in on your laptop maybe, but not here.
Okay, welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Critical part of our morning activities.
For the record, Laura Skundrick, Administration. So today we will discuss our fiscal year 23 video lottery allocations. As you know, each year the board reviews anticipated revenue for the county portion of video lottery funds and develops an expenditure plan for those funds. That has historically included funding for a variety of activities, including economic development, our service partners, and various projects. So we have collected information based on requests for this coming fiscal year and are prepared to walk through those requests with you today using this spreadsheet that you have in your materials and that you see on the screen. We also have our budget manager, Dan Emerson, is joining us today if the board has questions about any of the funding that we received from the state. I had worked with Greg Munn in the months leading up to this in preparation, and so now Dan has graciously jumped in to assist moving forward. So I'll stop there if the board has any questions for either one of us, or I'm happy to start working through the spreadsheet.
I think it would be great to start working through the spreadsheet.
Okay, fantastic. Let me see if,
And Laura, let me know if you want me to discuss the very first
yes,
request
please.
under requirements. I'll discuss the first one if I may. Administration Internal Services, which is just over $79,000. I checked in with commissioners on this some time ago, a couple of months ago. regarding using some of these funds to pay for the administration of this program, which requires a significant amount of Laura's time to coordinate with all of the different entities receiving the funding, the presentations. There's a lot of work that goes into this. This amount includes both her time as well as our internal service fund requirements that pay for all the other services to support Laura's time. So I just want to identify that as the first request, which is a new request this year, and certainly well within the balance of these funds.
So we haven't done this, there's always been something out there, though, hasn't it, overhead? Here we go. We'll get everybody up to the table today.
2022, there was not, and so this is a new request this year, but I will defer to Whitney, who has been involved with this program for a number of years.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioner DeVoe. For the record, Whitney Hale, Deputy County Administrator. We've historically charged ISFs for finance, the board, and admin to this fund. I believe that's been roughly in around $13,000, and this year the additional estimate of staff time and the cost associated with that, specific to video lottery-related activities, has been added on top of our typical ISF charges.
So can we think of 79,000 minus 13, I mean, the difference from 13?
You could. Dan would probably tell you that ISF charges change year to year depending on the budget, so yeah.
But the fact that we've
very
done
roughly
some amount in the past, and
accurate.
this isn't a full 79, it's more of,
It's more of that negative
50,
13,
60.
although this year I think that 13 has been adjusted up to account for the proposed budgets of those departments in fiscal year 23.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we
Yes.
can.
well, so I mean, I support that. This is, the overhead of doing it. We've seen great presentations from each one of our partners at this time. There's a lot of focus on being able to get the dollars out the door, and, quite a bit of board and staff time in prepping for those. So I do support this.
Definitely.
And I would guess, I mean, when you look at the whole suite of things that are being supported on here, I mean, certainly there's a lot of Laura's time that goes into this, but, when every time EDCO comes and makes a request for loan funds, I mean, that's, there's often numerous staff involved in some of the other lottery fund allocations that we make. So we certainly need to address those staffing costs somewhere. So I think that this is appropriate as well.
Speaking of the loans for EDCO, we haven't really done any of those recently. What is no one in the community really asking for those loans? Have we not heard?
I did check in with Dawn at EDCO, and they're currently working with a couple. They do expect to bring 2 requests to us before the end of this fiscal year. So we are expecting a couple of those, but I know they've kind of been working on them for quite some time now. So
Okay,
I think it's maybe just been a lengthier process than before.
right. Yeah, what is happening with your business, and can you pay it back, and do you meet all the criteria? So,
Well, and a couple thoughts along those lines. Generally, I had thought of it as about $2,000 per position for new traded sector jobs created. So it's a new company, a new business to the area. So, in the last couple of years, it's very dynamic, obviously, but probably not just a lot of new startups. So my thought is there'll be a wave of activity someday. It's just not happening right now, maybe not in the near future. With $110,000 currently in the fund, that's kind of the balance, correct? Those can be anywhere from, a couple jobs to up to 50, I think, was generally one of the maximums. So that would be, or 25, so $50,000. So there's a couple opportunities in there already.
That's a good point.
thank you.
All right, so if we would like to review EDCO's request here, we can get started in the economic development section. And just kind of as an overview, this spreadsheet, as the board knows, the first column shows last year's level of funding, and then the next column shows the fiscal year 23 request. And then the last column is the column that we'll be working through today with the board's potential funding allocations. So with EDCO, as you can see in your packet materials, they're requesting an increase to the funds they received last year. It's a 3.5% increase across the board. This spans their general operations, support for local capacity across the county, which includes Bend, Sun River, Lapine, Redmond, and Sisters, and then also includes funding for their venture catalyst program. And I'm happy to highlight what those increases look like. So for Sun River Lapine, that would be a $1,225 increase. Sisters Country, $1,225. Redmond, $525. Bend, $525. $1,400 increase to the Venture Catalyst Program, and $4,550 increase to the EDCO Regional Office operations.
Okay, so Laura, Sisters actually hasn't been meeting because we lost our leader. We lost Cappy.
Oh.
Yes, and so by this ask, that has the appearance that Sisters is going to be re-engaged shortly, I'm assuming? I don't know, have we heard?
I had not heard that.
Okay, right. No, Cappy gave notice, I believe she went on to Business Oregon. So she's still working in the community, and we do have a chair for that group, and I just, I really would love to see that it continues, because I think it really does bring a lot to the Sisters traded sector.
Sure. I'm happy to.
My impression is that in the interim, Eric Strobel is providing some of the capacity for EDCO support services in Sisters, but I'm not sure, clearly not at the level that Cappy was providing when she was staffing, kind of more full-time staffing there. And I don't know. I don't know what the long-term plan is either.
I think there's going to be an opportunity for us to be involved and understand what the big picture is. It's a partnership and, small community, referring to the city itself, the Chamber of Commerce, the traded sector efforts, referring to this Sisters Country traded sector effort. For today, I support this kind of incremental funding increase, so that's what we're talking about. And there's probably some conversations coming.
Yeah, Commissioner Adair, just to follow up on the Sisters-related item, in the EDCO budget proposal, they indicate that funds are presently being used to fund a part-time position, and that they're going to revisit that once the City of Sisters works through their budget process. And so it does look like that is a little bit in flux at the moment. I don't know, Nick, if you had anything else to add there.
Thank you. Prior to submitting the budget proposal, I met with the interim CEO, John Stark, and he committed that they would not miss a beat in Sisters going forward. So as they do determine the appropriate staffing levels and who that may be, and whether it's somebody dedicated there or somebody as part of their overall team, he committed that they won't miss a beat going forward. And
I think that's really important, because it's a very dynamic group that is on that board, and I know they're in transition. I know John's doing a lot of things, but I really would love for it to continue sooner rather than later.
Well, and once again, there'll be a moment in time, especially when some of the big land use opportunities start to present themselves with, the Forest Service development, some of the big things happening. So being prepared for the moment there is new industrial and commercial land available is what I would support.
Good. Okay.
One more question about the EDCO block here. So this note saying that we don't anticipate any loan requests coming in the coming fiscal year, but Laura, you said that there were some in that, or maybe it was Whitney. There are some in the pipeline.
Are you referencing that transfer, the $110,000 transfer to the Economic Development Loan Fund?
Yes.
We don't anticipate that another transfer will be needed for fiscal year '23, because we made a transfer of $110,000 last year and haven't seen that activity. So they're projecting about that same amount of activity in the next coming year, hopefully.
Got it. Okay. And so the balance in that account is it 110, or is it's?
No, that is not the total balance in that account.
I believe the balance is upwards of $200,000, and that fund typically, historically, has not received a transfer every year. It just receives a transfer when the fund balance, we think the fund balance is going to dip below the number of loan requests the board may receive from EDCO. So we coordinate with them around budget season and try to get a sense of how many requests they think they may bring the board in a year. And right now, we think fund balance in 050 will cover all the requests we're going to see in fiscal year '23 and in the remainder of this fiscal year.
So Dan, can you give us the exact number then?
200, the balance is 255,474 in beginning working capital and, or I should say that line item. In contract payments principal, there's 26,000, so the total is 282,647 right now.
Great.
Out for loans.
That's always nice to know, more than less, right? Yes, it's going the right way. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Dan, for joining us today.
3.5% seems kind of on par with COLA.
Okay, so do we need a motion to approve this?
I say just acknowledge each line item, so I do support the request.
Me too.
That's three of us.
Thank you.
Okay,
Here we
great.
go.
So now we're to Sun River Chamber.
Sure that's in there. All right, yes, in your packet materials as well, you'll see Sun River Chamber's request for a total of $65,000. This is a total increase of $13,000 from last year, which will allow the chamber to maintain their basic operations while increasing the scope of their Shop Sun River campaign that was initiated in 2020. So the way that breaks down is $45,000 request for their baseline operations, which is a $5,000 increase from last year, and then a total of $20,000 would go towards their Shop Sun River campaign, which would be an increase of $8,000 from last year.
Okay. And I know their new director is in the room, if we do have any deeper questions about what they're doing. It's an amazing community, and, you know, re-engaging your businesses who's still in business. The community of Sun River looks really prospering. I've been there several times, and the community itself looks like, you know, they're doing a lot of really good things. There's some new things available, but I can understand why they feel they acknowledge that this is an important ask for their community.
I just have a couple of questions. One, I just want to clarify something, and or for historical reference. I believe last year I asked the question and got the explanation that we include the Sun River Chamber in our lottery fund allocations because the other chambers in the region are all within incorporated cities where the incorporated city makes contributions into those chambers. Is that the basic explanation why we have the Sun River Chamber here and not Lapine and Sisters and Redmond and Bend?
Yes.
That's
My understanding, yes.
okay. So thanks for that. And then I did, there was, at a certain point, we had outstanding requests from a number of the chambers for ARPA funds. And I just wanted to kind of get a sense of whether we have moved on from that already, or whether those requests are still outstanding before we consider this one.
Yeah. So I would say the requests, at least as far as they refer to the COIC, small business nonprofit, are not outstanding anymore. They were deemed ineligible. That does not potentially mean that a chamber couldn't come and request through a different ARPA eligible category like education or childcare or something like that, but through the financial assistance, they were not eligible based on tax returns.
Okay, thank you.
So you're saying that message, Dan, for like Sisters, if they want to get funding from us still, that they need to approach it from a different strategy?
I think so at this point. Mm-hmm. There's other eligible ARPA categories. Nonprofits actually were found to be more eligible percent-wise than small businesses in the COIC process. So there were quite a few nonprofits that were eligible. So yeah, at this point, I think it would be kind of coming at it from a different angle. Doesn't mean it wouldn't be ARPA eligible, though.
And that's because they're a C4 and not a C3, is that what it is?
Why they weren't eligible in the COIC process?
Yes.
No, we took a baseline year of 2019, which was prior to COVID. We looked at their financials, specifically the net balance there at the end of the year. And the chamber's cumulative in 2020 and 2021 were slightly better, actually, than their 2019 number, which meant that it didn't look like COVID had an impact in that way on your net income as we decide to evaluate that.
Okay.
So I do want to think about the two things simultaneously, and to me, if the ARPA requests are settled and we've and we've moved on from there, then I would look much more favorably on supporting this request for an increase in lottery funds. That's just my perspective.
Well, and another avenue is to discuss is even, the baseline support is something that I've supported over the years. And then, an effort like Shop Sun River campaign for local business and visitors could be a partnership with Central Oregon Visitors Association or transient room tax. So there's even another path that we could be talking about here. So at this point, I would clearly support the baseline request at $45,000 to try to separate, the discussion, and then, think about, okay, for this other Sun River campaign, Shop Sun River campaign, $20,000 request, would we want to support that amount? And then, are there other paths we might want to do that in?
Well, I've seen what's been accomplished, and I clearly feel that 20,000, that Shop Sun River campaign is justified.
Well, saying I'm proposing possibly partnership with Central Oregon Visitors Association under the current revenue that they're receiving, or other unallocated transient room tax dollars, as a one-time investment. And I'm just trying to communicate with us.
These are economic development dollars, and this is an economic development request. So I think it's reasonable to approach it through the lottery funds. I guess one question I would have is the Shop Local campaign, is that a 1-year campaign, or is that kind of envisioned as a multi-year?
Christine, do you want to come and talk with a microphone and identify yourself, please?
Thanks for joining us today.
So would that likely mean an additional request kind of above base support next year as well, or for multiple years to come?
I believe so, because
Do you want to identify yourself for the record? Thank you so much.
Christine Thomas, I'm the Executive Director for the Sun River Area Chamber of Commerce. I envision this to be an additional request throughout, because I would like to hire someone on staff to help with various tasks such as social media and the Shop Local campaign. So that was my long-term goal.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you for joining us today.
Can I answer any other questions at this time?
So, understanding a Chamber of Commerce, it's a business service organization, membership-based. How many members currently?
We believe we have 200 members currently.
And then 200 paying members?
I believe so at this time, yeah. I've just started December 1st. We are working on, during the COVID years, we did not actively engage having our members pay because we wanted to support our members. So we are working to re-engage our members to be paying members. And that's something we're building from the ground up after the last 2 years.
So one of my thoughts is possibly just to put 2 lines in here. Instead of saying it's a $65,000 ask, maybe put a $45,000 baseline ask, $20,000 Shop Sun River campaign, because as a goal, as a small business owner, as a member of the Sun River Chamber of Commerce for the last 15 years, I'd like to see that dues-paying membership excitement in building up the organization. So hopefully that's all of our goals. So, yeah.
With various networking opportunities and events.
So, yeah, maybe just break this into 2 line items on this spreadsheet, so it's kind of a reminder in the future to say, okay, base funding plus, the campaign and the, generated revenue from the excitement of being a chamber member.
And maybe some of the membership, it seems like a shop local campaign is a very clear and tangible, a benefit to them. That maybe there are ways to get the membership to step up their game to make that campaign happen.
Like I said, I started December 1st, and so there are some, and with the mask mandate being lifted, there's a lot more we can do.
Great.
In the next few months.
And I know you are working on this because I see the fruits of your labor, and I know that the group is really pleased, Christine, that you have taken over the responsibility. And truly, it's like at Christmas time when they say shop local businesses. That's, I think that's so important. That's who employs our local people, keep our local businesses here. So I thank you for what you do. And Laura, if you want to do 2 lines, that would be good.
Sure, I'm happy to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
May do that as a follow-up to this meeting so that I don't mess up. Don't want to mess up.
You may.
Yeah, the formula's in there, so I'm happy to do that.
Okay, I think we're at Shop with a Cop.
I'm sorry, was there we're at the full 65?
Yes, I don't.
I would, yeah, with that split out, I would support the full 65 this year, and in the ideal world, the shop local campaign, there would be, I would love to see more member support for that in next year.
And I support it also.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so we are at Shop with a Cop. This is a program that the board has supported for a long time. It's run through our Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, and it's done through an internal transfer. And they hold a really successful program of helping those who need basic items.
I'm supportive of that.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is the Fuels Reduction Grant. This is run by our County Forester, Ed Keith. He's been running this program for the past couple of years. He's seen a great response to it. Last year, the amount was increased to $100,000, and that was fully obligated. And he is confident that they would have the same response this coming year, and that the same funding level would be fully obligated.
So they used every dime of that 100,000 then?
That's correct.
Excellent. Great.
Well, and it's really nice to be able to make this investment because they're very flexible at that point. Being able to empower Project Wildfire, Boone Zimmerly, and Ed Keith to be able to reach out to neighborhood associations and say, either we'll fund a chipping event for your neighborhood, or here's some dollars because your neighborhood is so organized to be able to, outreach to your neighbors for the fuel reduction effort. So, yeah, I'm really excited about that investment we can make for fuel reduction.
And I want to thank our community. We are now over 60 fire-wise communities in Deschutes County. I think when I was first elected, we were like at 30 or something. Anyway, it's been unbelievable, and the more people can personally take responsibility and clean up their homes, clean up their neighborhoods. So I'm glad we can do this 100,000.
Great.
Yeah, part of me is looking at the increased amount of state funding that's available for fuels reduction work on private property in Deschutes County. That's now available through SB 762, and thinking about, if there is a lot more state and federal funding, is it an opportunity for us to step back a little bit on this? But for example, that SB 762 money, that's going to fairly large private landowners. So I can certainly see there's no shortage of work to be done out there, and certainly having these dollars helps our team incentivize and support people who are thinking about doing something, moving to actually doing something. So, I'm still supportive. In the long term, though, I do feel like there's people should want to do this work because it is critically important to protecting their lives and property themselves. And so you don't want to incentivize that too much. But this is probably not the year to start squeezing on that yet.
Okay. Thank you. So moving forward, these are the special project support grants that were initiated for the first time this current fiscal year, 22. We can begin with Deschutes Cultural Coalition, who provided a proposal for today in your materials, as was requested by the board. So they are requesting $25,000 to support their fiscal year 23 Arts and Culture Grant Program. And as a reminder, you funded the coalition at $25,000 this current fiscal year for the same purpose, and they worked with us to ensure their scope and eligibility requirements for their program are set up similar to our Arts and Culture Grant Program. They also received funding from the Oregon Cultural Trust, and so our funds were matched by those, and they're working on that program as we speak.
Great.
So I'm real excited about that. The Cultural Coalition, made their case, but this is the time where, in society, having that other aspect of the community, arts and culture, is something that can really bring people together, and people can express their artistic nature also. So it's just it's a nice balance to all the other things we do. So that's how I get excited about that one.
Yeah. Even if just looked at purely from an economic development perspective, having a rich arts and culture community here in Deschutes County is part of what brings people here to visit, and what makes business owners think about relocating here. So this is an economic development strategy in my mind.
And it's an important one. So I'm glad to
There we
see
go.
it's on our spreadsheet. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. All right, next up we have the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative. This is one of the 3 groups that had come and provided a mid-year status report to the board about their projects during this current fiscal year, and happy to have a discussion about that. Looking for board direction on how we'd like to move forward with those 3.
I see these 3 organizations doing critically important work for our community, and so incredibly timely. Our kids, we have kids who are in need right now. We have a dire drought year looming over us, and we have the constant threat of wildfire. So I would support either continuing another special project grant for each of these 3 organizations, or converting them to long-term service partners.
I'm happy leaving them here, and it's actually interesting. Okay, so we had a presentation from Friends of the Children, but actually, the program started in Sisters, and it's Circle of Friends in Sisters. And I did talk to the director yesterday because I said, gosh, if you would ever need county funding, we would, truly want to hear from you. They're actually up to almost 70 children just in Sisters that they are working with in their program. So I know they've been around longer, but it's such an amazingly important program for our community, and I'm so glad that they're here doing what they do, and I'm really happy that they bought the ranch at the right time, because that's a great place for those children to go and take advantage of the outdoors.
Absolutely.
So I'm supportive of all these funding requests and at project support, just to have the conversation. All three of them are very worthy causes.
All right, great, thank you.
So, one other question about these is, what, I would like to see them submit proposals, explaining what they're gonna, where their organization is at right now in terms of providing services, what their key goals are, what they'll do with the funds. I guess I would continue to say that I think that these are groups that would be appropriate to convert to long-term service partners, and part of my desire to see those proposals is to kind of build the long-term case for that.
Well, yeah, so I absolutely support talking about it each year. It's the case has been made, and it's a great conversation that's happening in town, and it's not landed. We saw a lot of conversation about which trees were going to be cut from which area at Phil's Trailhead. So the social license is discussed vibrantly in our community for the acreage treatment prescriptions that have been worked on for 10 years. So I would hate to think that there's just a conversation that's going to go on, and and then there's opposition in the end, which is, that's the exciting part of it.
If you want to unpack that some more, that is actually a critical, a perfect example of why the work of the collaborative is still needed. That little patch of trees that was marked for removal was essentially, it was a unique patch of forest that wasn't like the ocean of 60 to 80-year blackbark pine that was around it, but the Forest Service treated it that way, and so that marking was, I would say, we'll see, I believe, a unified letter, or at least a supermajority letter from the collaborative soon on that, but we'll see a statement that says that that was not a mark that was in alignment with the vision and values of the collaborative. So it's, in this case, it's not an issue of the collaborative not making it clear to the Forest Service what they wanted. It was just in my opinion, an oversight by the Forest Service in their urgent rush to get a whole lot of work done really fast, racing against future fires, droughts, and other things. So the need for the collaborative to sort out this issue now for the community is pretty urgent.
Well, there's a huge difference between putting on a piece of paper the prescription. Are we following the prescription as agreed upon? It boils down to the basal area, how much diameter per acre of trees are on the property, and then still somebody's going to cry foul when their favorite tree is cut down. And it's just going to go on and on like this, which is fine, and I'm supporting this, the finance, but just not an ongoing thing. We're going to study it to death. It's 80-20 rule at that point. So this is where we need to disagree.
We're not studying it to death. We've implemented over 10,000 acres of commercial thinning and fuels reduction treatments within the West Bend project. This is like 5 or 6 acres within that wasn't done as well as it could be. And, this is basically a quality control concern that's come up, and that The way that it's being approached by, certain activists in the community, I don't appreciate. But asking the questions, and doing the quality control is appropriate. So, but this is not, we're not studying this to death. We are implementing at massive scale work and having to go back and do a little bit of quality control every once in a while, and that is an entirely appropriate thing.
Laura, I just wanted to look at our balance, remaining balance. Maybe it's at the bottom of the page. I know we haven't finished all these, but I was just looking at the requests, your middle column. It's 751,000, but we've just added, what, 60,000? So we've reduced that by 60,000. And our beginning balance this year was the $748,000. That's what we have left, right? At the start of the this next year, we have $748,000 left. But are we going to, when we get done, I just want to make sure we look at that number and see, in case of with the economy, what's going ahead with inflation, recession, et cetera. I just want to make sure that we don't bring that number down too far. I'm looking at it here and I'm going like, okay, I know there's some numbers that aren't there.
Well, and so, yeah, these are video lottery dollars. The agreement with the state of Oregon that local jurisdictions aren't allowed to have local gaming. So this is the percentage that comes back to us. I would like to see this revenue go down, which means people are not risking their hard-earned dollars in the big picture here. We do have a rollover balance, but as I say, in the future, with interest rates and inflation, I would hope that the revenue of this goes down in the future so people can make good choices about basic needs instead of risking their hard-earned dollars for a possible payback.
Yeah, and the fact that things as critical as education, economic development, watershed restoration, parks are all dependent on the state lottery fund. I share those concerns that this is not necessarily the right way to fund critical public services, but since it's what we've got right now, we'll work with it. But I would share the desire to see lottery revenue in the long term go down, but at the same time have a concern about us being able to provide critical services some other way.
And just a reminder, Chair Adair, to your point, these are projections, so these aren't exact numbers, but these are our educated projections based on what the state has provided and what we've historically received. So just a quick reminder there. Would the board like to see those proposals prior to determining the funding levels for these three? Or would you like me to work with those organizations and kind of
I mean, it looks like we have the financial capacity to continue them this year. I just, I just wanted to say, okay, they're not in our bottom remaining balance, so I've got to take them out. So, yeah, I'm just trying to think of the whole picture.
Yes.
I support seeing those allocations in this spreadsheet at this time, yeah.
Great, thank you. So moving down to service partners, which we had reviewed last week together. I'm happy to provide those high-level summaries if the board would like to revisit those. Unfortunately, today we don't have Sarah with us on Zoom, but I'm happy to, I'll do my best to answer your questions if you have any. So starting with Council on Aging, one clarification that Commissioner Adair had asked about last week was their mention of the Redmond service in their report on investment. That is a subcontracted service that is not funded through the service partner dollars. So we have asked that be removed from their report on investment for future years. So they are requesting a $10,000 increase to support additional kitchen staff for fiscal year 23 due to the increased demand that they're seeing. So that would be a $50,000 request.
That's a 25% increase in their request. To me, that seems, EDCO did 3.5. I don't know, that just seems like a really big increase at this moment, considering where we're at with our community. I'd rather see it maybe at like a $5,000 increase instead of 10. I mean, that's still 12.5% increase to their, what we allocated for them this last year.
Yeah, I would like to see, I also would like to see something more, closer to to last year's funding level. I'm a huge supporter of the Council on Aging, and that's why we, I think a number of us are, and that's why we've consistently made small grants during our discretionary funding cycles, and made a really substantial ARPA allocation just a few months ago. But we put a whole bunch of money into a kitchen, and now I guess that the request is to help staff that kitchen, and I kind of would like to do one or the other. So I would support,
What?
something.
You want to leave it at 40? And we actually funded them another $27,000 for that project completion to fund it. So I know. We helped finish it, and it just makes me a bit nervous.
Well, and this is Service Partner. This is, being in this category is the commitment for annual support. So we do know, we are starting at that $40 or $40,000 from last year, so I'd be comfortable with 40 or 45.
Okay,
42,500.
perfect.
Negotiating.
Right.
Next up is Mountain Star Family Relief Nursery. They're requesting a $1,600 increase due to the increased need for their services. These go to therapeutic early childhood classes, home visits, parent support, and transportation for children. And their safety net outreach services reached 47 children and their families. 100% of children enrolled in these services remained safe from confirmed cases of abuse and neglect during this time frame.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, for me, this is almost an opposite story.
Right.
We just charged them a bunch of money for a piece of land, which was a fair transaction. But I would have loved to have explored other locations where we could have possibly donated land to them. So adding these $1,600 certainly seems appropriate to me.
Yes.
I support that also.
Next, we have J Bar J. They are not requesting an increase this year. They, during this current fiscal year, they provided 654 nights of emergency shelter, crisis intervention, and family mediation to more than 26 youth ages 12 to 20.
Great organization. I'm
fine with that.
Me too.
And I love their classic horse show in July on the grass, if I can't say that enough. Thank you so much for putting that on. It's like world famous.
It sounds amazing.
Well, it truly is. The Grand Prix, and I think the winner was local this last year for at least one of the weekends. It's unbelievable.
Next, the Redmond Senior Center is requesting a $3,000 increase to support the increase in the demand and increasing food costs they're seeing for their Meals on Wheels and home food delivery service for seniors.
I'm fine with that, and they do have a request into us. I did email Dan this morning to see maybe we can meet on that next week on where our ARPA funding balance is. I know they're wanting to do a major kitchen remodel, and my suggestion was that they and Shepherd's House in Redmond all need to get together when they buy their appliances, because maybe there'll be more of a buying discount. But anyway, yeah, I'm happy with the 12,000. The program seems to have new life, and they are really they're working on bringing it up for their population growth in Redmond.
So I'm supportive of that also. Lapine Senior Center has sent us multiple requests for some kind of funding also, and they haven't really fit into the ARPA requests in the past. I was able to join them in their board meeting yesterday, and they've got a capital project for parking lot improvements that they're trying to get funded, but also they would love to be in this service partner category too. So I'm not prepared to, drop that in the spreadsheet today, but just for my other commissioners to understand, there's a request out there, and they've asked multiple different ways, so I'd love to respond some way.
I know, I think that, I was told they were going to send us a letter and ask for 30,000.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's still the number.
See, and as I say, yesterday I learned that is for capital project parking lot improvements, kind of redeveloping and safety improvements for the flow of the parking lot. There's some concrete that's crumbling, but then also just, resurfacing or whatever. So that's a project, but also, they're in that same spot where they're the Meals on Wheels partner, but ends don't meet in the long run. And they have other activities, they have events there in the weekend, and they mentioned that, in fact, for economic development purposes, having a healthy, flowing, good-looking parking lot is probably the most valuable thing they can do for fundraising, because then the car show can be there, the outdoor rhubarb festival, and all the different things. So that was just an interesting statement, is the parking lot is their fundraiser, So as I say, it's not, we've had a couple of requests for that, so it's not on the spreadsheet, it's just a conversation for today.
And thinking of parking lots, I don't know who it was, but someone from our community went in and asphalted the parking lot at Veterans Village for free. And, I'd love to know what business that was, just to acknowledge their generosity for the community and for that program. I mean, I know, isn't that, it's, the kindness from the community was to be thanked.
So yeah, I did support Redmond, I don't know if we finished.
Okay, so now we're at Kids Center?
Kids Center, yes. Excuse me, they're not requesting an increase for this next fiscal year. These funds support a medical examiner that conducts consultations and medical evaluations of suspected victims of child abuse.
And they just had their big fundraiser event the other day, so good for them. A lot of community support there. I think they did it online, so that was really good for them. So yeah, I support this same $30,000.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is Latino Community Association. They are requesting a $5,000 increase to sustain their move to the new Family Empowerment Center and meet their growing demand that they're seeing. They offer several different programs. These funds support 8% of their Healthy Families and Family Empowerment Program costs.
I'm excited about Latino Community Association. They really do just take care, and they get a lot of excitement going, so I'm supportive of this request, and that is $5,000 more than last year.
No, and I do appreciate Brad Porterfield and his participation on the Central Oregon Health Council. It's really excellent to have him part of that group and to hear what his feedback is for the community. So I'm happy with it's a 17% increase, that's fine.
Yeah, the long-term, multi-year trajectory, seeing that big of a jump in 1 year, if they're coming back next year and saying, hey, well, will you bump us up from 35,000? Then it doesn't necessarily. It may not be equitable to all the other service providers, but I certainly understand the 1 year need for some additional support to complete that move into that new building. I don't know if there's a way to make a note about that.
We can communicate that.
Do you know what did we give them in 21? Is that available, Laura?
Well, we could probably just have them come in and share with us at some point.
I believe their fundraiser, it said they raised $77,000 for their fundraiser they just had a couple weeks ago. That was on the KBN News one morning.
So in 2021 they were at $20,000.
Okay. 20? Okay, so.
We're jumping it up quick there.
So we are definitely trying to make a difference there.
Yeah. So I mean, all the more reason to just kind of communicate that one-time bump consideration.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Bethlehem Inn. They are requesting a $2,000 increase to help retain and recruit staff in this current competitive job market. These funds support a kitchen manager and a kitchen steward to prepare and serve meals as part of their meal program.
I would support that.
I would actually support it at 45 because they are critical in Redmond and in Bend, what they're doing with their expansion. I don't know, is this for the Bend operation then, or is this for Redmond's?
Happy to see if that's clarified in there.
Their impact in the community has only been growing.
But, I mean, we did make a $900,000 contribution to their facilities and
I know, but
2,000
that's construction, and look at the construction inflation that they're probably dealing with, and it's not done yet.
But, I mean, they asked for 42,000, so I.
Right.
How about just adding $500 to it, so it's 42.5?
Sure.
It is Bend and Redmond, just
Bend and Redmond. Okay, good.
42.5?
Sure. Just telling them that we are really happy with what they're doing. It's a positive message, right?
They are a critically important service provider in our community.
I mean, we've got to keep Gwen smiling. I know she's under a lot of pressure. She's a great leader for that group, and I hope that the $500 just makes her realize how much we appreciate what she does.
All right, thank you. So next we have Family Access Network. They are not requesting an increase for fiscal year '23. This funding supports an advocate, a fan advocate at an elementary school to connect children and family members to basic need resources.
They do some amazing work, and I'm happy funding them. I think they have an event next Friday?
Next week.
Yeah, next Friday. So.
Yeah, I support that request.
Okay.
Yes.
Next is Saving Grace. They are requesting a $10,000 increase due to the high demand they are seeing for services. These funds support staff who facilitate supervised visits and safe exchanges for families that have experienced domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and/or child sexual abuse.
I think this is one of the unintended consequences of COVID, or all the things that are happening in our community. And I mean, this is really, the stories are just so, they're heartbreaking. And I can understand why they're asking for another 10,000 from what I've been hearing.
If I'm tracking correctly, both this request and the ARPA request that they have outstanding are for, our staffing cost requests. So I think it is useful to think of those two requests side by side and how they coordinate. If we're going to, I would very much support making an ARPA allocation for Saving Grace. If we did make a substantial ARPA allocation for Saving Grace, then I don't necessarily think we need to do a $10,000 increase out of this program as well. But I don't. We don't have a good sense yet I don't have a good sense of what the vote will be like on their ARPA request. So.
Dan, can you tell us what they're asking for from ARPA?
I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but there's two specific requests. They're broken out differently. One is for personnel because of what you mentioned, the increased need, which they're tying back to COVID and domestic violence, and supervision for their weekend shelter. And the other proposal is for a little bit of a remodel and a kitchen upgrade so that they can house a few more folks and provide more meals during that time period. But I'd have to get the overall ask. I want to say that both combined was 300 something, but.
So that's separate than Mary's Place Safe Exchange service then? So that's kind of a separate effort of theirs, both of those.
That's probably the house that they have that they need to update.
In this list that was part of our packet, it talks about $177,000 request to support the weekend advocates of Saving Grace, who work out of our emergency shelter. So maybe That's the personnel component of the
Mhm.
two-piece bundle you just mentioned.
Yes.
So to say, yeah, Mary's Place is very much in support of court-ordered handoffs for cases, and it's really valuable, and we had the full court press years ago here from the court system saying, we want this, we need this. It's one of those avenues that we can mandate through, and from the bench to say, this is how you shall, hand your dependents back and forth. So it's a different project of theirs, yeah.
Yeah, and Commissioners, I'd like to just kind of correct what I said there. It looks like, yes, the personnel request is about 177,143, and then the total request, the sum of the two is 516,699. So that's the added on with the kitchen and the
facilities.
remodel, the more space, yeah, for individuals. Mhm.
Well, I'm comfortable at this time in doing the 10,000, and then when we evaluate the ARPA, then because I know we have several ARPA requests that we're going to be looking at.
Thank you.
Yeah, so.
When is our next cycle of?
I asked him if it was possible for next week. I don't know, Dan, if that works in your schedule or not.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to get the agenda going probably by next Wednesday, but we could certainly shoot for it, or the week after, certainly, and we can discuss whatever requests you would like. I'll send out an email. Mhm. Okay.
I would support this $10,000 increase right now as well.
Thank you.
Well, and I'll support it also. We are stepping up on some investments here. It's going to hardly ever be able to go backwards. So, I mean, as I say, there may be a point in the future where we're in a tough spot where, as I say, the vision of this fund going flat or going down could happen someday. So that'll just be very much a different discussion if that happens. But we're funded for it today.
Thank you.
All right, next, let's see, we're at Central Oregon Veterans and Community Outreach, Covo. They're not requesting an increase for this coming fiscal year. This supports their outreach coordinator who makes contacts with homeless and low-income people who visit the center, and contact with homeless people in camps as well.
I'm supportive, and I want to thank them for all the work that they do for our veterans in our community.
Supportive as well.
I am also. So we have other funding that we've committed to in the next couple of years, $100,000 at a time or something for the village. Where's that revenue coming from?
From the Veterans Village to the Veterans Village. I know we had an ARPA request. I'd have to check to see if it's on a reserve you're talking about for fiscal year 24.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just acknowledging that if it's ARPA, there'll be another moment in time where we don't have those funds anymore, and there'll be an expectation possibly.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the ARPA allocation to the Veterans Village was more capital, like a capital needs, and that there's in the MOU there is, Christie's nodding. In the MOU, there is a commitment to operation funding, but I'm not clear where that was coming from.
Yeah, and that was
Christie,
my
do you
question.
remember where that was coming from, or did we
Magic
not
happens here.
specify? Okay.
Maybe
But we
general
did
fund.
we did make the, that we were going to be part of that community support for it ongoing.
Well, and it's the most exciting thing that it's done, it's implemented, there's people in it, the last units are done, the common building is on the ground, it's paved. But yeah, it may end up being a general fund discussion or just scheduled into the budget in the next few years too.
And Covo will do an excellent job of running it, and
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to figure out where we're paying, where we committed those funds in the MOU from. I think the MOU was, it was already well underway in development when I was sworn in, so I wasn't privy to the earlier discussion.
Well, we'll start to understand what the total cost of operations are too, because, there could be scenarios where if things evolve and there's a small revenue source associated with the value of being able to stay there. Maybe they can make their finances even flow better, and how many staff do they really need? So we'll find out over time.
Okay, thank you. So we're at CASA?
Yes, the court-appointed special advocates of Central Oregon, they're requesting a $5,000 increase to support paying higher wages for qualified staff in this competitive job market. This supports staff to train and support CASA volunteers who support children birth through age 18.
I thought CASA made a ARPA request as well.
No, they never did get the number in. I talked to the director, called him again. I don't think we ever got a number for ARPA.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did have several conversations with her.
I remember having some discussions.
Right.
But, okay.
I'm happy with this $5,000 because I really thought she was going to actually ask for a lot more funding. There's such a need. There's so many more foster children in today's world.
I'm supportive also.
Thank you. Next, we have Healthy Beginnings. They are requesting a $5,000 increase to support increased staffing for their increase in screenings and treatment referrals. This funding supports delivering a minimum of one in-person or virtual screening per month to engage preschools and child care centers in high, free, and reduced lunch school areas.
I'm supportive of this request.
They've probably been through quite a roller coaster with just medical lockdowns and masks and, vaccines or requirements possibly. So, but I'm supportive also. Healthy Beginnings is always just that wonderful opportunity for a young family to get confidence in the development of their young child.
They've definitely made quite a few shifts during the pandemic.
Yes. That is the truth. It sounds good. Thank you.
And last but not least is our Upper Deschutes Watershed Council. The current year, we are funding them at $20,000. This helps to fund restoration projects, their monitoring program, support for general operations, and education and outreach for K through 12 students, community members, and landowners about the importance of watershed health and restoration. They are not requesting an increase for this coming fiscal year, and their executive director, Chris Knight, will come provide his annual report later this spring.
I'm supportive.
Likewise. So we don't have to wait. I know that we have a special setup with them where they come in, they do an annual presentation, but we don't have to wait until that presentation to approve an allocation for the year.
It's at the board's discretion, however you like.
Yeah,
It's fine, Laura. Good. Thank you so much.
move forward right
And
now.
this spreadsheet is a fund from our annual budget, which is, basically the $1 million expected revenue, $750,000 net working capital, and that's basically how it's published in the budget. And then this is the detail of that fund that is very much at the discretion of the commissioners.
All right, thank you. Moving forward to the grant program portion, we can start with our discretionary grant program. You're very familiar with this program. This is intended to assist eligible organizations with specific short-term projects or activities that positively impact either a specific community within Deschutes County or the county at large. A wide range of pursuits may be eligible for funding, including but not limited to job creation, education and training, social and human services, cultural tourism, and natural resource management. To be eligible for this program, an organization must be a nonprofit or publicly funded agency that serves Deschutes County.
Since this is my fourth year, our discretionary grant has been at $60,000. So that seems appropriate when you look at what our remaining balance is now, and those numbers aren't taken out of it. I think we should probably leave it there, and then we'll have to see where do the funds actually come in at.
Those seem like reasonable starting numbers.
Similarly, the fundraising portion, organizations apply for these funds through the discretionary grant program. These funds are historically been specifically for those organizations holding fundraising events that they request support for. Also, just a side note, as a reminder, in the current fiscal year, you were originally allocated $15,000. During our Q3 review, based on the requests, you allocated an additional $5,200 in order to have funds available for the Q4 review, which will be coming to you next week. So that total allocation became $20,200. For full visibility, those Q4 applications, there is one fundraising request of $2,000. So may not fully use that $20,200.
So those fundraising grants, when a organization figures out what that is, that really empowers somebody to have some fun going into a fundraising event, knowing that they've already got some starting money to be able to do something. So I've always been really excited about it. I'm supportive of 15,000 just as a starting point also.
Yes, I wouldn't raise it. Keep it at 15.
All right, and then lastly, Arts and Culture program is designed to increase arts and culture opportunities to make arts and culture education available to Deschutes County residents. As a reminder, you originally allocated $25,000 to this program during this exercise last year, and then during our application review, ended up allocating an additional $13,500. So that total allocation became the $38,500 that you see on the spreadsheet.
Actually, considering the economy, I would prefer to go back to the 25,000. And then, if things look better, we can always adjust, but I think being more conservative might be appropriate.
So I like that idea also, 25,000, pardon me, and also making sure we work with the cultural coalition on ideas. Maybe we, instead of just making it a call that we manage through our office, maybe the Deschutes Cultural Coalition can be our partner in even doing this project. Thinking of a request for ideas.
My impression is that the $25,000 that the Deschutes Cultural Coalition asked for, they are granting a substantial chunk of that out. I mean, is that?
That is what it's for, yes.
So,
they're separate.
in some
yeah,
ways,
maybe there's
we're sort of, I mean,
both ends, yeah.
We've just created like a new $25,000 small grant program that will be operating alongside our existing program. I would definitely support the bringing this back down to $25,000, and then also, as suggested, considering how we could coordinate these two programs, or just add those $25,000 to the pot for Deschutes Cultural Coalition to administer.
Well, and the most awkward thing that happens is we have a classroom teacher saying, I've got a great idea. For a couple $1,000s, I can do this with my kids. But, I mean, that's just jumping right from kind of the arts and culture into, classroom support, which just kind of crosses lines. And as I say, not that it's bad, and they're always so excited to make that application, but we could do that 100 times or 1,000 times. So, getting just more focused on what are we intending to do here.
And our last group to review is the United Way Emergency Food, Clothing, and Shelter Grants. This is a community grant program that the board has supported for years. And the United Way coordinates the distribution of these funds as well as federal funds that they receive for the same purpose.
And local funds, too. I know there's local fundraising efforts that happen for that effort.
How many years have we been doing 80,000 on that? I thank you for the spreadsheet at the back, Laura,
Yes.
on the history from 2018 forward.
Let me see if I can pull that up really quick here.
How does United Way use these funds to leverage other funds? Because I mean, this year, through ARPA in particular, we've made massive investments in emergency food and shelter. Directly, as opposed to indirectly through the United Way. So if if they use the dollars that we allocate to leverage, kind of amplify and kind of amass more funds for these causes, then that's a strategic reason to continue to fund at this level. But otherwise, you almost could make an argument that this would be a year that, since we made so many direct contributions to these causes, that we could actually do less. But I believe that leverage is a really important part of what United Way does. So,
And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm happy to follow up and find out more. I know when I sit on the committee that considers the applications, and the Deschutes County funding is its own separate category of funding, and so a small portion is taken out for the administration of the program by United Way, but the full amount of our funding is being just straight directly distributed to those organizations.
So are you saying that they do charge a percentage of our funding?
That has historically been part of our
administrative overhead.
Okay, so what percentage is it?
I'm happy to pull that up here.
No, because I saw some money that was coming from the state, and it was like for $22 million, and the people that were going to run that $22 million were getting like $2.2 million to run the $22 million, and I'm going like, oh my gosh. Okay, that's significant.
Whitney, did you have something else to add on United Way?
Just, excuse me, a little historical perspective for the board relating to how long we've done this. My understanding is that prior to 2014, 2015, we ran what was called a community grant program in-house. And at that time, that program specifically transitioned to the United Way funding that we have seen historically. And so just in terms of the question on historical funding, I think that is how this line originated.
Well, then,
Now we're basically running a community grant program in-house again, right? I mean, with our quarterly discretionary grant program.
I think we're running components not related to emergency food and shelter.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So United Way does good things here, but I am in a spot where either we want to take time to review it or understand more. When you hear about the overhead being taken out and going back to kind of the same providers we're going, I have a hunch that pretty much everybody on our service partner list is going to be applying to United Way also. So maybe it is a good time to just take a deeper dive into that one.
I'm happy to do that research and bring that information back. Not yet.
Great. It's only one number on the whole page, right?
Yeah.
That's not bad.
So do you want to
Kind of
fund it or not fund it for now? Put it in a number in there or not?
maybe hold funding, but review the situation and make a decision later.
That's fine. Yeah, so let's do that.
If you put the 80,000 in there, that's going to reduce our remaining balance to under $600,000, which makes me nervous.
Like, I'm happy to leave it blank for now, and I can bring it back when I.
Well, put it in there with parentheses or asterisk or something so that we know we haven't approved it. Yeah, we truly need to discuss it.
Italics highlighted, bold.
Make it in, yes, do it in pink, whatever.
Okay. Very slow mouse here.
See, because there could be value on both sides of this equation, too, for the organizations that apply for that, because it's just another effort, another little bit more overhead, another meeting to kind of slice and dice who's going to get what out of the pie. So the intention would be to do good things, but let's see if we can do it more efficiently possibly.
Yeah, and I mean, it could be very similar to this Arts and Culture and Deschutes Cultural Coalition discussion. I mean,
So Whitney, could you figure out the percentage then that they charged? Or do they charge us a percentage on that 80,000?
Commissioner Dare, if you're comfortable, I'd like to take some time and come back to the board. This predates both Laura and I in terms of this shift, so I just want to make sure we have time to talk with them and do the research we need to do and just bring it back to you in a package, if that's okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Whitney.
and I mean, even if there's some redundancy with what we're doing through other other components, if this is foundational funding for United Way that you know makes that United Way helps make that United Way office run, which you know does such important things in our community, that it may be worth paying for a little bit of redundancy, just to, you know, not to disrupt their program, which could have impacts on other parts of their operations. But yeah, I do feel like we made a lot of direct allocations to emergency food and shelter organizations this year, and it raises questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Concludes our spreadsheet.
So, for the Pine Senior Center, is there any thoughts about where we might go? Because, I mean, the ask is coming, and they've asked a few times, and ARPA just hasn't been eligible.
Well, is it not eligible, though, for parking?
We would have to review it. Generally speaking, capital infrastructure isn't eligible unless it falls under one of the categories. Perhaps it could fall under food assistance. Senior citizens aren't called out specifically as an eligible population in ARPA. It's more about lower moderate income. But we would have to review that request. But if you can tie a parking lot to, you know, food assistance or something else that it would be one of the enumerated eligible uses for ARPA, then certainly it could potentially be eligible.
I would think it could be tied to food assistance because you have to drive in, pick up your food, and you don't want your elderly population, tripping and falling over, pavement or asphalt that's a mess. So
I'm also just guessing in terms of this population served, you could probably make a low and moderate income argument. You just need to have the data to substantiate it. And so, I mean, maybe Commissioner DeBone, are you working with Lapine Senior Center on making that request?
Well, so as I say, yesterday, we've received a note a few times, ARPA, and then it just fell out, which was fine, for the criteria that we put in place. So then as I went to the meeting yesterday, they said, well, really, this is a capital project for our parking lot, is the most tangible thing for us, safety improvements and, just making it flow a little better. And so then I was like, oh, okay, well, that's good to understand what's possible here, what they really want to do. So it is.
I wonder if 30,000 would cover that parking lot, though. It's pretty huge.
Well, I mean, most of it's paved. There's unpaved areas and improvements that need to be had. So, yeah. But I just wanted to make sure we all heard about it, because
Right.
we'll bring it around.
Yeah, maybe we can
We can always,
bring it back in an ARPA eligible format, and
and then if we can't put it there, we'll put it,
Yeah, so I'll work with them. Yep,
Okay,
not a
good.
problem.
right. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you so much. All right, I believe we're at other items.
I was able to attend a video call on Monday for the Association of Oregon Counties Bylaws Committee, and this is just the very beginning. Some, just like we do our code updates, kind of the miscellaneous updates, there's some items in there that are just changing some of the terminology slightly, but also there's a couple discussion items about like the nomination and election process for president, which we saw in this last November meeting. Nominations from the floor is a discussion item. Also announcing to the past president, the acting past president, that I want to run for president, because that just became a little bit exciting at the last moment at our last meeting. So that'll come around. Once there's a proposed package, it'll be brought to each one of the district meetings in September, and then in front of the whole board to discuss. So it's evolving. It isn't a final version of a proposal or anything at this time.
Right.
Another AOC item I might report back on, the as we've learned, there is a federal land management subcommittee of the Natural Resources Committee at AOC, and that group, as I've learned in the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of questions about whether that group should exist, what it's supposed to be doing, who's paying for it, and there's been quite a lot of subcommittee and committee action on that. The upshot is basically that the Federal Land Management Subcommittee met, and there were, the way I would characterize it, there's a number of Western Oregon counties who are narrowly focused on O&C lands, who, because the Federal Land Management Subcommittee isn't doing what they, representing them on those issues the way they want to, i.e., what they wanted was basically that their issues would be the primary or exclusive focus of the Federal Land Management Subcommittee. They wanted to dissolve it, but when it came to a vote twice, they tried to dissolve it in various ways. It was the vote failed, and primarily because a number of Eastern Oregon counties said that they actually still wanted the Federal Land Management Subcommittee for various purposes. So, the vote to dissolve it failed, but basically that subcommittee hasn't been doing very much for the last 2 years, and those O&C counties, they said, well, if we can't dissolve it, we want the dues that we've been paying for the last 2 years back. So that came to a full vote, a vote of the Natural Resources Subcommittee at AOC, and there was a majority vote to just give them their money back. So I don't have a good sense of exactly how much money that leaves the subcommittee with, but we do know that the subcommittee is going to continue to move forward. That there may be opportunities to focus on issues that are of broader interest to many counties across the state of Oregon, and not just kind of O&C county issues, including the things that I was emphasizing to them were that we need investments in hazardous fuels reduction, we need investments in recreation infrastructure on our federal lands, and there were a number of Eastern Oregon commissioners who were interested in that subcommittee working on federal land grazing issues. So that's my best understanding of what that's going to look like moving forward.
It was interesting because the Eastern Oregon call, I think it was Tuesday morning really early, they were talking about ranchers in the state are paying, I personally paid $340 a ton for some hay. They're paying this much for hay, and yet we have 500,000 acres of CRP land that is just, growing, sitting there. And remember the fire we had in Wasco County a couple of years ago where it went through wheat land, then it went through CRP land. A farmer actually lost his life on a caterpillar. And they were really hoping that a relationship with the federal government, Congressman Ben was on the call at that time, what they could do with the relationship so that CRP land could actually be grazed, because one of the requirements of CRP land is that you have to keep it fenced. So several people on the call were aware of it. From what my research was, we don't have like grazing land in the Deschutes forests that are elsewhere, such as in Crook County. But truly, if we could get that CRP land grazed, I think it would be a win-win situation.
So if we're talking about the same thing, CRP land is private land.
Right. They're getting paid to not have wheat on it. My family has it from like the 1960s, 70s, whenever CRP went into existence. And they still have to keep it fenced. They get paid not to grow wheat, and yet, in our world this year, perhaps we're going to need some of that land to go back into production.
Yeah, I mean, the tension is that it is, it's typically land that's highly erodible and highly likely to impact water quality. Have erosion and sediment runoff into important streams if it is if it is actively tilled or or if it's grazed hard. So I mean that's why people are paid an incentive to put it in a reserve, but they are allowed to. I mean I don't know how the time frame for this works, but people are allowed to withdraw their acres from CRP if they don't want the payment. So I mean if they're being paid to kind of not disturb fragile land, then there is a risk if you're doing grazing on it that you are going to cause some impacts. So that it's it just seems to me that if they don't want it to be in CRP so that they can use it for agriculture, then they should unenroll the land.
Okay. Thank you for that opinion. Last Wednesday and Thursday, I was part of the Connect Oregon group. ODOT had set up the meeting on Zoom, not in person. I was extremely disappointed with that decision by ODOT. We were allocating $46 million for a state for projects. Our region had 7 projects, which were truly impactful. 2 of the projects I was working on did not make the final cut line, but fortunately, Monday morning, I met with Sharon Smith, who is a commissioner on ODOT. On the board, we went over all the different decisions that were made, and hopefully Sharon can help. Also, on Saturday, I met with Senator Finley, and because the Erickson project in Madras was asking for a bit of funding to finish it, it's to complete the maintenance program for the Erickson. They are planning on adding 3 more MD-87s to their fire suppression program. Seems like an important project for all of Oregon to have the best fire suppression vehicles, planes available in our community. So anyway, Senator Finley is working on that one and talking to Sharon. The other project that did not get funded that I really felt like had a excellent opportunity to help Highway 97 was for the North Klamath Mill to have the railroad upgraded to keep 600 freight trucks off of Highway 97. So haven't given up on funding for those 2 projects. It's, I think it's really critical, and the notes will go in that I really feel like we should have been there in person. I think that would have been a much better situation for the community. So, and then actually on Thursday afternoon, I got a call from Holly Jukes because I had been contacting Glenn Casamassa, the Deputy Regional Forester in Portland over China Hat. You all have seen everything that's been happening, all the fires going on in China Hat. So Holly called and said that Glenn's right-hand person, Sally, was in town, and could we please meet Friday? So we met Friday afternoon at 4 with Holly and then several members of the community of China Hat, and talking about what can be done to improve the safety. And of course, you saw where there were a couple more fires over the weekend. And also at the same time, the sheriff's office called me because they were meeting Monday at 1 with the Forest Service. So I do believe that the community is stepping up. Hopefully, an emergency campfire ban can be implemented sooner rather than later. Holly is working on it, and Sally is very well aware of it, and truly this message got all the way to Washington, D.C., from what I've been told, that the Forest Service has to respond to the public safety and dangers in China Hat. Last year, we had a total of 925 calls to 911 from China Hat. Now, a few of those calls were duplicates, but there was still a considerable number of calls, and it had only increased over the prior earlier part of the year. So I think I'm hoping that we'll be hearing back from Holly shortly, and that campfire ban will be implemented as soon as possible. So that's all. And Nick, do you have anything for other items?
I do not, thank you.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to share. So a week or two ago, I mentioned that the Oregon Board of Forestry is coming to Deschutes County to do their first in-person meeting in 2 years. They'll be meeting, I didn't give specific dates at that time, but the meeting will be Wednesday, April 27th and Thursday, April 28th. The 28th is going to be a field trip. I believe that all 3 commissioners have been invited to that. And if you haven't, I can make sure that Rob Pencer from the Central Oregon District Forester and other people know that they should have included you in that invitation.
Great, thank you.
What date was that?
Wednesday, April 27th, and Thursday, April 28th.
Okay, so that's a meeting date?
So they'll do their day of indoor meetings on the 27th, while we're doing our Board of Commissioners meeting. If we're done early, or if we wanted to kind of work around it, you could attend parts of that. And then the 28th will be an all-day field trip. I was asked to speak at one point during the field trip, so I'll be along for the ride the whole day. But there's also options to come in and out and drive individually if you want to do that. And I believe there's going to be an evening gathering at OSU Cascades on Wednesday night, the 27th.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, so we need to go into executive. Okay, Stephanie, thank you.